Hey guys, Aileen here from Homegrown Happiness. Welcome to November's video. It's pretty cloudy today, but there's actually only 3 more weeks till summer, and despite the weather not looking awesome, the ground is definitely warming up. I have heaps of self-seeded tomatoes and pumpkins popping up. In today's video, I'm going to just do some of the usual walking around and talking through what's growing, but I also wanted to talk about some of the fruit trees that I've got, because I don't really mention those, and I have actually quite a few fruit trees on my property despite it being quite small. So first up, here's my garlic, and that has unfortunately gotten a lot of rain lately. It doesn't have any rust yet, but I'm like really not holding out much hope, and the fact that it's been raining heaps is not great for the bulbs as they're forming. Ideally you'd want to let them dry out for their last few weeks. So above the garlic I have one of my first fruit trees, and that's an apple. And that one I harvested fruit from for the first time last year. It's still pretty small. So today I wanted to talk about my fruit trees and what I plant around them. So when I plant a fruit tree, I like to create like a guild around it, which is a permaculture concept of like companion planting around your fruit tree. And the idea is that you plant lots of plants that benefit the tree and the soil and kind of create an ecosystem around your tree. And it means it's quite hands-off for you. So once those plants are established, they will provide your tree with nutrients, they'll protect the soil, they'll deter pests and attract pollinators and all that stuff. So around my apple tree, for example, I have some oregano, or oregano, I don't know how you say it, I say oregano, and that one is meant to help deter pests because it's got quite a strong scent, but it's also a ground cover and it's edible, so it'll protect the soil and I can use it. I also have some Comfrey, which is the dynamic accumulator, so that's got a really long taproot which will pull the nutrients up from in the soil, and then when the leaves drop it'll break down and those nutrients will be available at a much more surface level for other plants to take up. I have some Borage seedlings, which is another dynamic accumulator, and then my nitrogen fixer, which is one of the most important guild plants, is this clover. And so a nitrogen fixer is the plant that will take the gaseous nitrogen from the air and then convert it into a form that other plants can take up. And you can use whatever you can find. I just use the wild clover that's growing on my property anyway. It's a great way to make use of the weeds, and it's a really beneficial one. Then a little bit further down is my Omega plum tree, and that one was only planted there this winter, so the guild around there is very new. I've just got some oregano and Comfrey and Borage seedlings around there at the moment, and I'm going to plant some of the clover there as well. And then here is some passion fruit and grapes, and then I've just got lots of wildflowers here. And then down here is my black boy peach. So around this one I have some strawberry plants which I'm using as a ground cover, and then I have some alyssum, which is also a ground cover but also is great for attracting insects with the beautiful flowers it has. I have some sweet peas which will be nitrogen fixing. I have this big Comfrey plant which is wonderful for the tree, but also this is one of the main ones I use to mulch around the garden because it's quite large. I have some Phacelia, and I have some clover here as well, and some poppies and some lavender and just lots of other wildflowers. Little side note on the Comfrey that I use, I have a variety called Bocking 14, which is a sterile one, so it doesn't self-seed everywhere. If you want more you have to use root division, so that's when you break off pieces of the root and plant that. That's how you multiply that one, which is good because it won't take over your garden. And then down here I just have still some kale that we're trying to harvest now because I would like the space for some zucchinis. I have my parsnips, my first lot anyway, which 2 germinated, so that's really going to get us through, a day of winter. But luckily I have planted some more down in the bottom garden. And then here are my huge borage plants, which are awesome, and I'm letting those go. The bees love them. Then I've just got lots of other flowers there, and then up here as well I just want to fill this with flowers. I've got dahlias, cornflowers, dianthus, and some thyme. So these archways where my beans are going to go. I want to do a lot more dry shelling beans this summer because again they can be stored and eaten through winter. I planted out my first lot of zucchinis just about 2 days ago. They're just getting comfortable now. Here's the ever faithful silver beet that's actually more for the chickens than us. They love coming up here and eating it. And over here I have some tomatoes that I've just planted out. Some more random garlics. A random beetroot. And here is my one of my no-dig potato patches, which is all popped up. So right now this is hay, but I also have some pea straw here that I want to lay out at some point because the hay is starting to break down quite quickly, seeing as there's so much rain, and then there's a lot of grass seed that germinates in hay when it gets wet. So putting some extra mulch on top of that will block out the light for those germinated grass seeds. And up there is, so back at the top where the garlic was, I actually have a hazelnut tree there, and then I also have another one there, and a Chilean guava, and then down here, this is just a random broad bean wildflower bed at the moment. I also have an apricot tree, which actually has one apricot this year. This is the first year that we'll have any fruit from it. And another apricot tree. I also have comfrey. I've got nasturtiums, which make a great ground cover, and a trap crop for pests. I have some lupins. And then I've also got this dock here, which again is considered a weed, but I like to use it because it's just like comfrey and borage. It's a dynamic accumulator with a really large taproot, and it will return lots of nutrients into the soil. And then I have some flowers and clover. Then down here I've got my rhubarb, and then another no-dig potato patch, and some flowers along the edges there. And on this side I have my crazy plum tree. Next to this crazy plum tree are some raspberries, and these guys I'm just letting go nuts, and they are just sending out runners everywhere, and I would like this whole strip to be raspberries. There I've got a lemon tree. And next to the lemon tree I also have currants. And then I've got a whole border of feijoas. And here I have my corn patch, and I planted some kumara slips here as well to work as a ground cover. I also put in a pumpkin seed, or one or two, so we'll see if they germinate, and then they can hopefully grow happily alongside the kumara. I have grown kumara as a ground cover for my corn last year, and that worked well. They didn't seem to compete too much for resources, so we'll see if it does it again this year. I have heaps and heaps and heaps of kumara slips this year, so I'm really just finding lots of spaces around the garden to put them in. Okay, now coming down the path, here is a pear tree, which is just growing steadily but no fruit yet. It's still very young. And then here is a white cherry. Here has an orange tree, and then a couple of dwarf stone fruit. And then I would like to make the whole ground strawberries and flowers and herbs. And this one is my Griotella sour cherry. And over here I have a Mandarin, and this one's growing in a grow bag, and they're wonderful if you want to keep your trees at a reasonable size but not restrict their roots. In this garden here I have a whole bunch of random things. I have passion fruit and grapes at the back. I have lettuces, tomatoes. I have some parsnips germinating under the netting. Well, they've actually already germinated. Now I'm just protecting them from blackbirds. I have an odd brassica here. Over here I've got lots of carrots and interplanted with some onions, some brassicas that we're still waiting on, a wall of peas, and beetroot. And then over here, this is another little extension of a no-dig garden that I made just to pop in my eggplants and chickens that I'm growing too, apparently. But yeah, all I did here was just added a little bit of paper, and then I've dumped heaps of compost, straw and aged manure on there, and comfrey, because comfrey is really good for fruiting plants. It contains lots of potassium, which they need to produce fruit. And here underneath this netting are my autumn brassicas that I have to repot into large pots, but I'm just keeping them safe from the white butterfly at the moment. Got some Brussels sprouts in there and a few cabbage. Here are my mouldy purple potatoes that are flowering and looking really nice. And up here I have a Tamarillo tree. And so this one I actually chopped down because I thought it wasn't happy here. So I chopped it because I couldn't get it out. I chopped it and it just grew back like crazy. And it has some fruit on there too. Well, I mean some flowers. And then coming down to the front garden, I've chopped heaps down now because it was blocking the sun and I needed space for summer crops. And then here I also have a little peach tree. It does have quite that curly leaf, so I'll need to deal with it. Here's my strawberry patch and some garlic. And then I'm waiting for all these brassicas to be ready before I plant out more summer stuff. And here I've got a dwarf pear tree, and then some foxgloves and other bits and pieces. I like to grow bigger plants like that because then I can use them for green mulch when they're done. So the mulch down there is like some cornflowers that were getting too big and chopped up foxglove and other bits and pieces, and they will just break down and feed the soil. And then on this side I've added a new no-dig garden. This piece of land here gets good summer sun, absolutely nothing in winter because the house behind it blocks it, but in summer the sun is high enough so it actually reaches it. So I've made this into a pumpkin patch. Around that I've got lots of New Zealand yams that I planted in pots. Then coming around here is another big guild that I've set up with a cherry tree. And then underneath that are heaps of strawberries and herbs, a few pumpkins and lots of berries around as well. Got some chamomile and some comfrey and some clover. So I hope that gave a better outlook of what my garden is like and what I've got in here. So yeah, there's quite a few fruit trees. Things are obviously spaced closer than that may be ideal, but I would much rather try and see what happens than not try at all. And as for the summer garden stuff, well, I've got quite a bit in here now, but lots of seedlings still to come. I'm also sowing more stuff. Staggering summer seed sowing is also always important to prolong your harvest and then keep also your harvesting amounts manageable. And that's it for this month's video. If you have any questions, please ask, and I'll see you next time.